Hey, guess who just got vaccinated? It's me. Did you guess me? Because it was me. It was me the whole time. And I got the scar to out. Prove it. Arm's still kind of sore, actually. Anyway, today I'm gonna be sitting down, watching and then reviewing all 3 Fear Street movies on Netflix. And originally this video was supposed to have the hook of, I just got my COVID vaccination, so let's sit here for 6 hours watching movies as my physical health starts to deteriorate due to the side effects. However, it's been well over 24 hours at this point, and unfortunately, I feel fine. Ain't that some shit? So yeah, this is just gonna have to be a regular reaction review video. I'm sorry. But at least I came prepared. I got my big ass bowl of popcorn, I got my Diet Coke, I got Lil Creepy next to me to chase away all the demons, I have my safety pillow to hug if the movie's too scary, I have my gun if the movie's too scary, a second big ass bowl of popcorn, and I have my sword in case the movie's too scary. Everything I need. So I'm going to start watching these movies now, but for you guys, I'm going to jump right into the review of Fear Street Part 1, and I'm just going to be sprinkling in reaction shots here and there during the review, so that's just how it's going to work for this video, and I hope you enjoy it. So, me in the future, what'd you think of Fear Street Part 1? So initially after watching Fear Street Part 1, I was pretty disappointed, but now after seeing all 3 parts of Fear Street, I'm still pretty disappointed. And no, that's not necessarily to say it's a bad movie. That's actually kind of one of the issues with it, is that it's not bad enough. And don't you just hate when you go into a movie and it's not as bad as it should be? Because that really pisses me off. But the reason I'm giving it an out of 10, because it's just not that good either. Like, there's nothing really special in it, it's just kind of bland. And it really just kind of falls into that middle ground where it's really not bad enough to have fun at its expense. The stuff that's bad about it is just bad. I would like to point out, however, that I do think that each part got progressively better, which, yeah, that means that part 3 was my favorite, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. For now, let's just stick with part 1. And let's first talk about what I liked about it, because that's a shorter list. So first I want to praise the performances in this movie. Like, I've never heard of any of these people, I've never seen their faces in anything else, but I feel like everyone played their characters very well, and I would be pretty excited to see their faces in any projects in the future. Also, I found the story here to be very intriguing. So it's essentially about a witch back in the 1600s who put a curse on this town that turns normal people into supernaturally possessed serial killers. Supernaturally? Is there any other kind of possession? So it turns normal people into regularly possessed serial killers, and our main cast is dealing with the most recent iteration of said serial killer, while also trying to figure out how to put a stop to the curse. Which, yeah, I'm in. Sign me up. I really want to know how this plays out. I also think they did a really good job with the comedic relief character, and the only reason I bring that up is because it's so easy to mess up a comedic relief character. I mean, I feel like a lot of times comedic relief characters are just really overused, and they just never shut up to the point where it's like annoying. And in fact, there was a movie that came out recently that had that issue. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I mean, I'm sure it'll come to me eventually, right? So they didn't overuse him, which was great, but on top of that, I thought he was pretty amusing.
We have to clear her airway. I got this. How many fingers am I holding up?
Which is probably going to be one of the most subjective things about this movie, but he made me giggle a few times, and that's where my praise ends. And I'll tell you one thing, they're lucky they got the intriguing story part right, or else this would have easily turned into an I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And nobody wants that. So if you've seen or read any reviews on this movie yet, you've probably heard about the soundtrack. And don't get me wrong, I was enjoying some of it, I was singing along. I wanna fuck you like an animal. But you know, I just want to know whose fucking idea it was to cram like 17 90s pop songs within the first 25 minutes of this movie. And I need a name. Okay, so maybe it wasn't like 17, but it was still like one after the other. Like there's no breathing room for any of these songs. And to make it weirder, after that first 25 minutes, you don't hear another pop song like that for maybe 40 minutes. It's just really strange. Also, there were only a handful of kills in this movie, only one of which was creative or interesting in any kind of way. I will talk more about that kill in the spoiler section of this video, but until then, I have saved the worst for last, and that is the characters. Because at first, almost all of the characters are kinda the worst. As in, like, each of them individually are the worst person. I don't even know how that's possible. But that's how movies work. They start out shitty and then they become better by the end. Is something I hear you saying in a probably offensive, stereotypical Boston accent. You're getting ahead of me, and I don't appreciate it. First, we have Kate. So when we're first introduced to Kate, she's pretty much making fun of the fact that one of her classmates got murdered last night.
You guys are dicks. It's just fun.
And it's like, what the fuck? What a shitty thing to do.
It's just fun.
Again, yeah, I know Simon's also there doing the same thing, and he's that comedic relief character I said I liked, but I am going to backpedal a little bit here, because I said I think as a comedic relief character, they did a good job. I didn't say he was a good dude. So like, I mean, side fuck you. Fuck you off to the side, Simon, you dick. But that's not where it ends for Kate. No, it's also shown that she's a drug dealer, and not for like cool drugs like weed. No. Opiates. Like highly addictive prescription drugs. And on top of that, they talk about how someone she sold to overdosed. And does she show any sympathy? No. Instead, she just says,
Timmy wasn't a real OD. He didn't actually die. They brought him back.
fuck you, asshole.
They're both morons. Excuse me? Which one of us is valedictorian again?
Bullshit. Okay, so I don't know, maybe this is just me and I went to a school with really preppy students, but in my experience, there's no way in hell a drug-dealing cheerleader could be valedictorian.
No president of every club this shithole has to offer.
They don't have time for that. Cheerleading maybe, but drug dealing? Oh, hell no. They gotta like study and do homework and shit. And she's also shown to be a babysitter later in the movie. Where do you find all this time? I guess it is 1994 and there's like not internet. So yeah, maybe there was a lot more time. I mean, I don't know. I was friends with a valedictorian in my school, and there's no goddamn way he would have had time for all of this stuff. I don't know. Am I looking too much into it? Did I just go to a top tier high school? I'm laughing because if you went to my high school, you'd know that's bullshit. But I don't know. Just let me know in the comments. Sam is alright, I guess, but she doesn't really feel like she's there. Like, she's really just there for plot purposes, not really to be a character. Like, anytime she said anything, it was just like, why are you talking? Speak when spoken to, plot device. Josh is fine too. He didn't do anything to piss me off. He's just kind of a nerd. And that's about it. But I saved the worst for last, who is, unfortunately, our main character, Dina. Dina's an asshole. And here's the thing. It really feels like in the end, nobody learned anything and they just were the same shitty people they were at the beginning. And with that, I think just to be safe, let's issue the spoiler warning here. So there's actually going to be non-spoiler and then spoiler sections for each movie. And because I'm considerate, unlike the characters in this movie, if you check the description down below, you'll see I've put timestamps for each section. So if you want to go into the movie without any of it being spoiled, you can just easily skip around like that. Or if you just came here for a recommendation on whether I think you should watch Fear Street Part 1, well, it's complicated. Because the tagline of this movie is 3 movies, 1 story, and that could not be any more true. Because if you do watch Fear Street Part 1, you almost have to watch Parts 2 and 3 to actually get the full story. And here's the thing, I wouldn't recommend Part 1. I kinda really disliked part 1. I still don't know if I would recommend part 2, even though it is clearly better than this one. 3 is easily the best, like hands down the best. That one definitely gets a recommendation, but it's not like it matters, because if I recommend anything, I have to recommend the whole trilogy or nothing. It's very confusing to me. So I guess just to take it a step further, I'll say this. If you are interested in seeing Fear Street and you feel like you would like it, go for it. But you do have to watch all 3. If you're on the fence about it and you're not really sure if it's for you or not, save yourself 6 hours. Go volunteer at a soup kitchen or something. And I think I'll just leave it at that. So if that's all you wanted and you've decided that you do want to see the Fear Street trilogy, go ahead, go do that, then come back to this video and finish it because I really need the watch time. So I was just talking about Dina, and the thing about her is that by the end of the trilogy, so I guess this is kind of a spoiler for part 3, she doesn't change, and we're literally left with the same piece of shit Dina that we started with. And the Dina we started with sucks. And if you saw the movies and you liked Dina, you thought she was a completely likable person, I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying that everybody watches movies differently, and maybe you just weren't paying attention to the certain things that I was, and you're wrong. I mean, for one thing, throughout the entire trilogy, she's really only concerned for herself and Sam, which would sound like a noble thing, sure, but I feel like the only reason she even cares about Sam is because Sam makes me happy and I want to be happy. I don't care about anybody else's happiness or well-being for that matter. And it really seems like Dina's character is based around her relationship with Sam. But here's the thing, Dina's a shitty girlfriend. She doesn't deserve Sam.
Can we just talk for a second?
No.
You broke up with me, remember? So stop acting like I'm the bad guy.
So yeah, Dina broke up with Sam, but like, did Sam cheat? Was Sam abusive? Did she feed arsenic to Dina's dog? No. Sam didn't do anything, actually. Sam's parents got divorced, which isn't Sam's fault. Probably. And Sam had to move in with her mom, who lives 30 minutes away from Dina, which Dina makes a huge deal about, even though that seems pretty manageable to me.
I am half an hour away.
It might as well be the goddamn moon, and you know it.
I don't know anything.
Yeah, well, I do.
Okay, a half an hour is not the moon. That is a significantly shorter distance. Like, it's really not that hard. Would that be a big deal in 94? I don't feel like it would be. I feel like she's overreacting just a little bit. It may as well be the goddamn moon. No?
And I mean, my parents are still together, so I don't even know what it's like to have to go through a divorce. Especially when I was like a teenager, when I'm still trying to figure out who I am and get a good grasp on my own mental stability. I mean, that second one's still an issue, but whatever. But Dina couldn't give less of a shit about how Sam is feeling through all of this. No, she just breaks up with her. And at least that's the first reason she gives. There is another one that I think is probably more the issue. But like, she doesn't keep silent about this other problem, so it's like, why would you even use the whole moving away thing to cover up this other reason if you're just gonna bitch about that too? I don't get it. Maybe I'm misinterpreting, maybe I missed something, again, just let me know in the comments, I suppose. But this other reason is really what makes Dina a shitty girlfriend. And that's the fact that she just can't stand how Sam is still in the closet about being a lesbian, which is 100% not okay, because she's essentially giving Sam this ultimatum, either come out or I'm gonna break up with you. And that's super fucked up. Like, this is a very deeply personal experience. And for some people, I would even argue most people, it's a very difficult and sometimes scary experience. It really just depends on your situation. But just because you're out and it was super easy for you, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. But that experience is going to be different for other people. You know, other people, a concept that you probably don't really consider ever. Okay, I don't know why I was so sarcastic when I said I'm happy for you. I really am. Like, if you're out and that was a super easy thing for you to do, that's awesome. I really genuinely am happy for you. I'm just so pissed off at Dina for being an asshole. And I'm sorry, I know I don't usually like to be serious on my channel. I mean, I hate being serious. It's it's boring, but I just really hate the way they're conveying their message here. And like, I get that the message here is you shouldn't be afraid to be yourself, be true to who you are, and that's a good message. You really shouldn't be afraid to be yourself. But to have the protagonist of your film, the person we're supposed to side with, the person that we're supposed to be rooting for, be so selfish and disrespectful of her girlfriend's wish to stay in the closet is incredibly problematic, especially since she was basically told that she was in the right the whole time, and she's gratified in her selfish, disrespectful ways. It's just really disappointing. And I just want to say one more serious thing. We'll get back to goofing around after that, I promise. But to try to contradict what this movie might have you thinking, if you are currently in the closet and you're struggling with that, just take your time, come out when you feel like it's the right time, not just when it's convenient for somebody else. And when that time comes, there's literally an entire, very well known, very well established community of people that are willing to accept you with open arms. So just remember that you are not alone. Anyway, let's start talking about the best kill in the movie and why it pisses me off. So the way that Kate dies is kinda great. Like, the way it's shot, what they show you, how it's done is just really, really good. And it is super creative. I don't think I've ever seen death by bread slicer. Is that what that is? Whatever it is, I'm glad it was used to kill someone. I'm a sociopath. But it's bullshit. I was just starting to like Kate. Like, she was showing character growth and everything. Like, there was this whole relationship thing with Josh, who has had a crush on her from the beginning. They were totally setting up them being together in the end. But no, to the bread slicer with ya. I mean, who really needs to have a character arc to make us like you for a little bit and then kill you off? But they didn't let it sit. You gotta let that shit sit. You gotta give me some time with the actual likable Kate before you bread slicer. And then like less than a minute later, Simon dies too, cause fuck you, audience, that's why. And like, their deaths just come out of nowhere, which a lot of times doesn't even make me mad. And I don't really know how to properly describe the feeling, except to say that whenever a kill like that is done right, it usually has me going, oh, what the fuck? Notice how there's a bit of a smile on my face? These kills had me like... What the fuck? You know what I mean? But all in all, I stand by my initial opinion. There's nothing really special about this movie. Obviously, I have more things to complain about than I do to praise, so do with that information what you will. This is easily my least favorite movie in the trilogy, and I do not recommend it.
It's just fun.
So, part 2. So for Fear Street Part 2, Fear Streetier, I mean, I don't think it's as bad as the first movie. Is that a compliment? I actually don't know. Am I complimenting it? Yeah. Yeah, it's a that's a compliment. You know what? That is a compliment. It does have one of the biggest issues that Fear Street Part 1 had, and that's the fact that it's just really bland, and there's just really nothing special about it. But they definitely do make some significant improvements upon the first. For example, at least we don't have to deal with dickhead Dina as our protagonist. Instead, we have this new asshole character, who also sucks. At first. But that's just one of the things that makes this one superior. The shitty characters actually get character arcs. You know, character arcs like the things that are supposed to be in movies that show how a character has grown over the course of having to deal with whatever it is they've had to deal with. Yeah, that's in this movie, and it's wonderful. They also have a handful of decent kills in this one. Nothing as creative or interesting as that one from the first one, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm pretty sure there are more that are on screen, and for the most part the effects were done really well. I mean, some of them looked kind of janky, but for the most part they were good. And as someone who loves gore in horror movies, I was fairly satisfied. The performances here were also very good, just no complaints on that end. But I saved the best for last. There's actually some score in this movie. As in, when they play pop songs from that era, it's actually appropriate and feels natural. It's not just 90 song after 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 90 song. It's not a problem in part 2. So they pretty much improved on everything that I had an issue with from part 1, but I don't think I would ever recommend it if it was its own thing, like if it was just its own self-contained standalone film, because again, there's just nothing that's really special about it. There's nothing really that's memorable, and I mean that literally. Like, I forgot almost everything that happened within 24 hours of my first viewing, and at least Fear Street Part 1 had some shit that stuck with me afterwards. I mean, it was all pretty much bad stuff, but still. So I guess it's pretty lucky that it's not a standalone thing and it's a part of a greater story full of 3 movies. You got lucky, part 2. Okay, it's spoiler time. It's time to talk about spoilers, so go to the description right now and check the timestamp for when you gotta skip the spoilers. So that twist at the end where Ziggy was the one to survive and she just assumed the identity of her sister, everyone saw that coming, right? Like, it was so obvious. I'm almost insulted. I'm not really holding this over the movie overall though. At least they tried, and I'm sure they got a few people with it anyway, so it's fine. Anyway, Ziggy really sucks at first, am I right? And she's the kind of asshole that I really don't like. She's the, well, bad stuff happens to me, so I need to make life a living hell for everybody that comes into contact with me because they need to have it just as bad as I do. Hate those types of people. If that's you, you can fuck off. And yeah, I realize their town is cursed or whatever, and she's right about that whole thing, but my point still stands. At least she does come around in the end, and I actually do feel kind of bad for her when she's laying there with multiple stab wounds. But I did have a flashback of Kate's death when Alice died. Like, it just felt unfair, and it came out of nowhere just like that one, but I didn't feel as cheated. Like, I still felt cheated, but it wasn't as intense of a feeling. And I feel like that's mostly due to the fact that she got an arc. Not only that, but when we started to like her, we got to spend a little bit of time with her to build that up a little, so we felt something when she actually got. And I mean, come on, that decapitation right after her death, one of the best kills in the movie. So good. I love me a good decapitation. I will say though that one thing I thought was just kind of silly was the hand of the witch.
It was right there. All this time buried under the moss, and I found it. I fucking found it.
A glove with a skeleton design? How does that help us, Alice? I don't know, it just looks bad to me, like laughably bad. It's a little thing, I know, but still, I wanted to point it out here. I do feel like at this point, I don't have much else to say about it overall. Everything I can think of is just nitpicky little things that don't really affect it one way or the other, so I'll just leave off on this. Why all these clocks? Was Ziggy obsessed with time, and I just missed some important detail that showed that? I really just don't get the whole clocks thing. I mean, if you know, leave it in the comments, please. I'm very curious. How does that help us, Alice? Alright, on to the good one. So by now you probably have a good idea of what I'm looking for in these movies, what I'm actually like talking about and critiquing. And so for this part, it's gonna be no different. So let's talk about the characters. We finally get them. Decent characters. Characters that aren't overtly pieces of shit. And they do get character arcs, but even then, they don't start out as shitty people, so it's really easy to root for them right off the bat. Except for like a few people that are very clearly supposed to be the antagonist, like of course. But here they're very clearly defined, like these are the people to root for, these are the shitty people that are out to get you. And don't get me wrong, I like, even prefer movies where the main character isn't as black and white good or evil, but that really wasn't my issue with part 1's characters. My issue is that they are very clearly shitty people, yet the movie acts as if we're supposed to root for them regardless, and then they don't even get character arcs that make them better people in the end? Like, where are you going with this? Where are you going with these characters? And then to, in the end, pretty much gratify the shittiest one in her shittiest opinion just makes it so much worse. You'll have to to see the spoiler section of part 1 to fully understand what I'm talking about. Sorry. But before I continue, it's kind of important to know, if you haven't seen these movies before at least, and you're wondering how the sequels could possibly take place in the past, well, it's mostly just flashbacks. So like part 2 is like 99% flashback, and part 3 is like 50% flashback, which I don't think they really made clear in the trailer or really the synopsis on Netflix. But yeah, part 2 and 3 are mostly flashbacks. So what's really unfortunate about that is that the 1666 story takes up only about an hour of runtime in part 3, and it is by far the best story of all of these. Which makes a lot of sense because they still need to finish up the story from 1994, because that's technically our present day, and the main characters still have to have their final showdown, you know? So it makes sense, it just kinda sucks. Thankfully, when it shifts back over into 1994, it doesn't really drag down the film as a whole, because a lot of that is also very well done. The worst thing is now we once again have to deal with these shitty characters, but I mean, even they aren't that bad this time around. And when I say not that bad, I mean like they're fine. It's really a non-issue. But just know that moving forward, everything that I'm praising mostly concerns that first hour where it takes place in 1666. But another thing that's awesome about the 66 part of this is that it takes place in 1666, and there's not a chance they're going to play 17 fucking pop songs from that era in the first 25 minutes. I mean, unless they want to like jam out to Bach or something. And because of this, just like part 2, the music here was done well. There was actual score in it, and when they brought back the pop songs, they felt natural and like they belonged in this movie. So that was very well done. There once again is a lack of good kills in this part, but I don't really care, because this one focuses much more on tension and suspenseful scenes that for the most part are executed very well. I mean, I didn't even say very much when I was reacting to it for the first time, and sure, maybe that was because I was 4 hours into a movie marathon and it was 2 a.m, so I was tired. But upon my second viewing, I was also very interested in what was going on. Even though I knew what was going to happen, I could still feel the tension, which now that I think about it, more or less carried into the 1994 section of the movie. So I don't know, it was just tenseful in suspensions. But just because there wasn't a lot of kills... Wait a minute, hold on. Okay, actually, that's not true. There were a good handful of kills, just not... It was... I'm not going to spoil anything, just watch it. Or I'm not going to spoil anything yet, just hang in there. But just because there wasn't as many on-screen deaths doesn't mean there wasn't any gore. There just wasn't a ton of it on screen, but when it was, they made that shit count. Because I think there was only really 2 times it got graphic, and both times it was extremely effective. Because you're not really expecting it with how the movie has been set up and with how it's been playing out up until those points. In one of these 2 times, it got this genuine reaction out of me that I absolutely love having. I love having these reactions because they just don't happen to me anymore. Like, look at that emotion. Look at how horrified I am. I love it. I'll show more of that in the spoiler section for this movie, but I looked pretty much just like that, even in my second viewing. So you know whatever I'm looking at was done very well. I also want to point out one other thing that I think is great because it takes place in the 1600s. Because it takes place in the 1600s, all the actors have to talk in that funny old English accent, which is always a good time in movies, because I feel like almost no one is good at that. Most of the actors here aren't very good at it, or at least not good at keeping it up. So pretty much every other line delivery is just like, Sarah Fear, you're on trial for witchcraft. And it's really funny every time. See, now this is the perfect example of a so bad it's good thing. Like, this is fun. This is something to make fun of. This is something to derive entertainment from. It's very clearly not supposed to be happening in the movie, but it is, and that's hilarious. And with that, it's spoiler time, baby. Alright, now that it's just us. That twist! I know this is basically the same bit I did for part 2, but still! What a twist! I mean, they did a great job at subverting the expectation, like having 2 whole-ass movies to set up your twist for you. Like having 3 movies for one story is unconventional enough, but they really use that shit to their advantage. M. Night, take notes. But seriously, to have Solomon be the real guy the whole time, it's such a great way to combat the whole we know what happened, so why are you showing us this kind of thing, which was initially an issue when I sat down to watch this for the first time, because I thought Seraphir was the witch. And because of that, I'm just sitting there going like, yeah, we get it, she's gonna get corrupted by evil, or she's gonna accept the devil because of her love for Sam or whatever. So obviously I didn't call this twist right away like I did for part 2, but I mean, like, no one did, right? If you called that, you're either clairvoyant or you read the books. Either way, it's not fair and it doesn't count. Anyway, moving on. I like how they used some of the same actors here, and it might have just been to save money, but I took it as showing how history can repeat itself. I mean, that's just how I took it. If I'm wrong, I could be wrong. I don't know, I like thinking of it that way though. Anyway, let's get to what really matters. The gore. So that pile of eyeballs was disturbing, yeah. So like the first person possessed is that preacher, and that was so well done. It was really impressive because up until this point the movie has been very, ooh, the devil, he hides in the shadows, he's tempting you, he's gonna get your soul if you let him in, ooh, he's in the background though, you don't want to piss him off, I swear. The horror of the movie lying mostly within the unknown, then boom! Pile of children's eyeballs. But then, the second really gory part. Sorry, I was having flashbacks. When Sarah's hand gets fucking ripped off of her, that too is just so well done and it looks so good in such a bad way. And here's my reaction to it. God damn! Oh, that looked good. Ooh, that looked good. And I really just don't have these types of reactions to horror movies anymore because I've been corrupted by Satan. No, sorry. I mean, I've been desensitized by Satan. So when something does this to me, I think it deserves praise. Of course I didn't look away from the screen. I don't look away from the screen ever, cause I ain't no bitch. Which, I mean, that's not necessarily true. Not the bitch thing, but I did have to look away. Oh god. Oh no, I had to look away in the movie The Dentist. Yeah, there's like B-movie from the 90s, I think, maybe 80s. But goddamn, there's this oh god, there's this one kill in that movie. It gives me chills just thinking about it. There's this kill where the dude takes a needle, doesn't fill it with anything, he just pulls the plunger back so it's like filled with air, and then he sticks that into the neck of somebody and he pushes and the air just like goes into them and it goes into their head, and I fucking hate it. I hate it. I had to look away from that shit. I don't like it. I don't even like thinking about it now. It makes me feel weird. Ugh, I can't. I need a minute. Hold on. Why did you make me talk about this? Why did you do this to me? So before I give some final words on the trilogy overall, I do want to nitpick one thing in this movie.
I will make a deal with the devil.
Are you mad?
I don't fear the devil, Hannah. I fear the neighbor who would accuse me. I fear the mother that would let her daughter hang. I fear union.
Like, you don't fear the devil. You don't fear him, but you fear fucking Mary Sue and her passiveness? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Alright, so I'm sure I've said it a couple times, but this is hands down my favorite movie of this trilogy. I would definitely recommend it if it was his own thing, but unfortunately it's not, so you're gonna have to deal with 6 hours of movie if you want to get 1 hour of this. So, bummer. So now the trilogy as a whole. And I don't think I really kept it a secret, but I don't really like this trilogy overall. It's just not really for me. There are some good, I would say even great moments throughout the trilogy, but for the most part it doesn't really offer anything substantial. It's just mostly forgettable and bland. Even with the third part being fantastic, to have the first one stick with me for all the wrong reasons, and then having the second one not sticking with me at all, I just don't think it was really worth it for me. But get your tinfoil hat on, because I have a theory. Now my suspicion is that they were going for something more accessible as a horror series, specifically as an R-rated horror series. Which I know that might sound crazy because usually in an attempt to be accessible, horror movies are just usually PG-13. But on Netflix, anyone can pretty much access it anyway, at least for the most part. So they still wanted to play a lot of this stuff safe, just like a bland PG-13 horror movie would do. So there's gore, but there's not a ton of gore. There's nudity, but there's hardly any. They can say fuck a bunch, and they say fuck a bunch. So they're left with these movies that are trying so hard just not to offend general audiences with all the things that make slashers good, but they're still trying to have an R-rated slasher movie. It just doesn't really jive, you know? But I don't know, it could just be because they're based on books that were written by a guy who was used to writing children's horror novels, and that's why they're so inoffensive. Oh, it was Kano. It was Kano.